Good morning. This is the 16th lesson, of the International e-learning project lessons about classical miasmatic constitutional homeopathy, conducted by the Homeopathic Academy in collaboration with the Classical Homeopathy Data Bank and the International Summer School, Marathon Summer School of Classical Homeopathy. We continue the presentation of our materia medica, that is, to be more correct, of the presentation of constitutions, human constitutions. Today we will speak about the constitution Hyoscyamus. From some constitutions, from the study of some constitutions, we can learn many things about the human nature, about the structure and function of the human being, and especially of his soul. And from some we can also learn many things about the universe around us and about the laws of the universe. It's very common in holistic thinking and philosophy to examine theory and practice, philosophy and everyday life, and jump from the theory to the practice and backwards. Because one of the main universal laws that holistic thinking and philosophy is founded on is the law of unity. Although many things seem different and diverse, the essence of all of them is one, and that is why because they are united. Such constitutions that teach us a lot about human nature are Hyoscyamus, Anacardium, Lachesis, Argentum Nitricum. In Argentum Nitricum we learn that we have we have learned about how the human brain works and the intellectual soul works. We see that in Argentum Nitricum the essence, the main thing is that although his intellectual soul should have gas and brakes, the brakes don't work well and the gas is fully stepped on. Why is this happening? What does this reveals to us? What does this reveal to us? It reveals to us that our brain, our intellectual soul is connected to the upper or lower psychological world. In the same way that our physical body and our etheric body are the children of the mother material world and etheric world correspondingly, in the same way our individual soul, our individual, and part of it, the individual intellectual soul of man, of a person, is the child of the mother psychological world. So we've got the telecontrol, we've got the telecontrol in our will, our free will. We've got the TV equipment and screen here in the brain, and we push the buttons in order to connect from our choice towards the lower psychological world or the higher psychological world. We are not producers of thoughts. We are not producers of wisdom. We are just users. It's in the same way that we are not producers of of the content of the web, of the internet. We are users. We are the user, the man. The computer is the telecontrol, and the web is the channels that we tune to or not. This is a great strike on our human egoism, but that's how things are. We can be good users or bad users, spiritual users or users of lower will and standards. That's what we have learned from Argentum Nitricum, that we have this universal law of the levels of human being, and that we have free will, and so on. From Psychosis we have learned a lot about the art of manipulation and how people are most of the times playing this game, this negative game of controlling others, of being victims and perpetrators. Psychosis is a great perpetrator, a great manipulator. From Anagardium we will learn later the levels of the human soul. That is, that we have the intellectual soul and the conscious soul, and we've got this contradiction most of the times. That is, our conscience tells us that we should be moral and naturally moral and according to the universal laws, and our conscience brings the intellectual soul, and through this the whole human existence in contact with the individual spirit and the higher spiritual worlds. But if our will decides to be tuned to the lower levels of our existence, to sensual soul and to the external world, then there is this contradiction. So Anagardium feels that he is always, the psoric Anagardium, feels that he is always in contradiction with his two wills. He has two wills that are contradicted. The good will, conscious, and the bad will, intellectual mind, and through him to the lower psychological world. And so he feels as if he has two selves, an angel and a demon, a bad self and a good self. Let's see what can we learn from Hyoscyamus about the structure and function of man and his relation with the external word. But, okay, let's see it. Hyoscyamus is a constitution that is very burdened. It's a constitution that carries with it a lot of pathology, and especially on the psychological level. We can call Hyoscyamus one of the pre-psychotic or psychotic constitutions. We could say that it is the main and the most frequent pre-psychotic or psychotic constitution. What is psychosis? In the same way that in cancer we have the extreme of physical disorder and pathology, the cells get crazy, some of the cells get crazy and become enemies of the whole organism. They get separated from the unity, from the whole. So separated that they become negative towards the whole organism, the whole human being. In the same way and accordingly, psychosis is the extreme of psychological, of mental illness, of mental and psychological disorder. And the soul gets so disorganized and the brain gets so disorganized that it turns against the man as a unity, his psychology as a unity, and against the society. Again, in the essence that we are a unity with other humans and with the nature around us. So, again, we see that both cancer and psychosis are the complete disunity with our self and with our union with the human society and with the material environment around us. Yes, but what is psychosis? We know from classical psychiatry that the psychotic patient has delusions and illusions. He has insane ideas. He misinterprets what he takes from the external material environment and from the psychological world. The classical psychiatry says that the psychotic sees things that are not there, that do not exist, or hears things that do not exist, or fantasizes things that do not exist. The key word is exist. You see, the same wrong attitude exists from allopathic medicine for many things. For example, classical allopathic therapeutic system examines only the material body. And classical science before about 2,200 years ago believed that only the material world exists. Then the physicists and the scientists of physics and chemistry started understanding, realizing that there is also an energy world, and that the material world and the energy world are together, are a unity, and the materials turn to energy and energy to materials. So, about 200 ago, the official science of physics and chemistry, said that only the material world exists. There is nothing like energy world that doesn't have matter and that we can't see it. Only what we see exists. What we don't see or we don't feel with our five senses doesn't exist. Yet, we know from physics that all this energy world, the sounds, the infrared radiation and other not visible radiations do exist, and that we understand with our mind that black holes and other cosmic planets or things that exist, not only we cannot see them, but we can only talk about their properties only from experimentation and through other instruments that don't bring this data, that don't bring this existence in our senses, but we find about their existence using our intellectual soul. We also have learned that many times we can learn about the existence of higher things from intuition. So, the idea of existence has changed a lot, even in the science of physics and chemistry and mathematics. We have learned and realized that not only what is traced by our five senses exists, and also we can learn about the existences of things and beings by higher senses, the senses of our soul, the senses of our etheric body, the senses of our conscience and our individual spirit. The higher the senses, the higher the levels that we come in touch with. So knowledge can be of the knowledge of many senses, and we use many levels, and we use different senses, the senses of each level, in order to come in contact with knowledge, with other beings or with other words and materials. Why do I say these things? Because my strong belief is that there is nothing that doesn't exist. All things exist. Everything that comes in contact with our senses, with our material senses, everything that comes in contact with our etheric senses, everything that comes in contact with our intellectual senses, with our mind, with our sensation soul, with our intellectual soul, with our conscious soul, exists. and everything that comes in contact with our individual spirit exists. And you see, our individual spirit being a drop of the universal spirit of God, of the universe, can come in touch with the whole universe. As we go down, we see that, and it is logical to suppose that our intellectual soul can't come in contact with the whole universe. It can come in contact with the psychological world. So you see, if we go to the man and the universe, we have several levels. And as we have talked, when we have discussed about the structure and level, the structure and function of the human being and the universe, we have these corresponding levels. We've got the individual spirit, we've got the soul, we've got the etheric body, and we've got all the vital force, and we've got the material body. And soul has three levels. The higher level, conscience. The lower level, sensual soul. And the middle level, the intellectual. And these are in accordance. They have the corresponding levels. The spiritual world, the level, the psychological world or level of soul, the psychological, and this has the higher psychological world and the lower. Then we've got the etheric world and the material world. Our body, our material body, is the child of the mother material world nature. Our etheric body is the child of the mother etheric world, and we exchange matter, etheric energy. Our soul is the child of the mother psychological world, higher or lower. This corresponds, conscience corresponds to higher, sensual corresponds to lower. And the intellectual soul is the mediator, is the operator of the whole existence, not only of the soul, but of the whole existence through our will. And man has free will to be tuned to higher levels or to lower levels. And our spirit the individual spirit, the drop of God inside us, is the child of the mother spiritual world. How can we apply this knowledge, this fundamental knowledge, in psychosis, and in order to understand the constitution of Hyoscyamus? There are many words that we can't know, that usually we don't perceive their existence. For example, there are small materials like the atoms or the molecules that we don't see them. We need a microscope, a great microscope, in order to see molecules and atoms. Normally, we don't see the infrared, the radiations around us. We don't see the X radiation. And normally, some people cannot hear high sounds and others can, and so on. So, there are limitations normally to our material senses, to our physical levels. In the same way, most people don't feel the flow of their etheric energy in their body, or the exchange of etheric energy with other beings, or the cosmic etheric energy. But some people, when trained or under certain circumstances, can broaden their limits and can come in touch and in contact with the etheric energy outside or inside them. Yoga is one of the arts of learning to feel your energy and etheric energy, and so on. Some patients, when receiving the homeopathic remedy, they feel as if a flow of energy started. They sense this flow of energy and they get better, and not by a placebo effect. Others don't feel it and they get well. Or some people feel that they are going to get sick hours or days before this is done. Some other presense their death, and so on. These are etheric sensations, etheric feelings. We can come in contact with the higher and lower world every day by thinking and by feeling. Normally, but there are so many people and philosophies and religions that say that there exists other, more higher worlds, the world of the angels, let's say, or of God, that we cannot see them or sense them. Or there are lower, non-material, lower psychological worlds, the words of the demons, of lower spirits, that we cannot sense them, yet they exist. All religions believe that there are bad spirits and good spirits. That is, beings of the psychological world, of the lower psychological worlds, demons and bad spirits, are beings that exist, beings of the lower psychological world, while angels are beings of the spiritual world. Normally, under normal conditions, our intellectual soul our mind can only come in contact and sense thoughts that we believe are ours, that we draw from the higher or lower world. And these thoughts cause the corresponding emotions and the corresponding behavior according to our intellectual patterns and according to our miasmatic and constitutional influences. Yet, when we are unconscious, we don't remember when we wake up after being in a coma what happens in the environment. There are other situations that our sense of things changes. In sleep, when we are asleep, we don't understand what happens in the environment. We can feel heat, sounds, and so on, and we can sense these in our dreams symbolically. If there is heat in the room and our body feels it, then in our dreams we may see that there is a fire around us, and so on. And in our dreams, many people and scientists say that, or philosophers say, that in our dreams we come into contact with higher worlds. Higher worlds, spiritual worlds, and we have good dreams, or prophetic dreams, or lower worlds, and then we have nightmares. Yet many scientists say that only what we see and is around us exists, and only what we can record or come in contact with the properties of by equipment, by the microscope, by experimental devices. If everything exists, so my point is that everything exists. Everything that we feel, think, and perceive exists. Because either you have a united universe, and when we say universe, it comes etymologically from the word universe means everything that exists. There is nothing else outside of universe. So universe consists of many words and levels, and it exists. There is nothing outside of universe. There is nothing supernatural, nature and supernatural. We say this thing and it has meaning only if we say that nature is the material world or the lower energy world. And anything that is above this material world and lower energy world is supernatural. Yes, but if by nature we mean universe, then there is nothing outside of universe. If we believe that universe is only nature, the material and the lower energy world, then there are things that are supernatural. But if we want to be correct, we should say that only everything exists because everything is part of the universe, and the universe is everything, and there is no exception. So all things exist, either if we feel them or not. Either if we, as non-perfect beings, human beings, can feel them or not, can think of them or not. Universal laws existed before we started thinking about their existence and will continue to exist even if human being is erased from the universe. So, if everything exists, and if we know from several situations that most of the times, usually, we don't sense and perceive all things that exist, then why say that a psychotic person sees things that not exist? We could say that psychotic people, patients, because of the extreme nature of their illness and because of their great disorganization, great disorder, they start getting in contact with the lower words, the lower psychological words, in the same way that prophets and saints and enlightened people come in contact with higher psychological words and with the spiritual world. You see, this is enlightenment through meditation and prayer and so on, and this is disorder. You come in touch with angels and higher spiritual beings in enlightenment, in meditation. You come in contact with lower psychological world beings of psychological world, with the demons. And that's why almost all psychotic patients are haunted with the demons they see and with the demons they hear. This is not something that doesn't exist. Usually we don't come in contact with this, but in such disorder, those patients come in contact. That's why they so strongly believe, they are so absolutely sure that they have seen the demons, they have heard the devil and so on. They don't imagine these things. A classical psychiatrist may say that I am crazy, I am insane for saying these things, but I am fully aware of what I am saying. Is classical psychiatry fully aware of what it says? About 200 years ago, let me give you the example that the physics, the science of physics and the science of chemistry, the scientists of physics said that the energy world doesn't exist, and they were absolute about it, and anyone who said the opposite was lunatic, was crazy, was insane. But at the same time, the religions said and continued to say that demons exist, angels exist, higher spiritual levels exist. Are they also insane? Philosophers like Socrates and Plato say that higher levels exist. Are they also insane? Even Socrates, the most wise person of his times. You see, there is a pathology in modern science. They say that only what we can prove that exists by measuring it exists. Before measuring it, it doesn't exist. After measuring it, it exists. That's stupidity. That's human selfishness. So, I say that psychotic patients see and come in contact, due to their abnormal situation, with the lower psychological world, and they are so absolutely sure that these things exist that you can't change their mind while during the psychotic crisis. Especially the first time they become psychotic, during the first psychotic crisis, they are so afraid, because it's the first time that they come in contact with lower psychological beings, with demons. They are so afraid, so excited, so anxious, and they think, most of the times they believe that they are chased, they are hunted by these demons, they are tortured by these demons. When we give them antipsychotic chemical drugs, what we do is not that we disappear demons. We suppress the brain, the nervous system. And by suppressing the nervous system, we suppress their communication with the lowest psychological world. And so they stop seeing, or they see at times these demons. Christ talked about possessed people by demons and did miracles getting away demons from a person. Was Christ a lunatic? Other great spiritual founders or saints believe that that not only angels exist but demons. And since we are living in a world of duality, at the world of duality, from intellectual soul and down, this is the word of oneness, of unity, of uniqueness, and this is the word of duality. This is the word of duality, and this is the word of uniqueness. So here we have demons. Here we have angels. So, according to my personal opinion, and not to the homeopathic opinion, but I believe that we should do philosophizing when needed in order to explain the phenomena of the everyday clinical practice. We should think and suppose that psychotic people come in contact with lower psychological words, the words of demons. Homeopathy, giving etheric energy